again.
I'm actually nervous to hear what you have to say.
Hello and welcome to the Deep Human Bear Podcast. My name's Sean and joining me as always is the one and only Dante Boffin. Mr. Boff, my man, how are we?
I'm pretty good, Sean. I was dead before, washed out, lifeless, listless, and now I'm revived.
But there's two dogs surrounding us. This is our first ever live studio audience. We've got two dogs who, if you look at them, they'll look at you in the eyes and look like they're actually listening. But other than that,
well, deep eye contact with these guys as well. They love like a lingering look. But the dogs, but also this lovely drop of red cordial.
the old Bigfords.
Yeah, the old Bigfords. Nothing like 47 grams of sugar just injected into your bloodstream.
Yeah, they say a little goes a long way with Bigfords. For cordial, there's Bigfords. And I've gone with the old 3366 fill in this one, just to really make you crash as soon as you go home. After you've parked the car.
You're gonna put the Bigfords ad in halfway through this episode, or
yo at Bigfoot sponsor us. Are they an Australian company? I'm trying to see if there's any sugar in these fake beers as well.
Yeah, we've got the Carlton Zeros going as well.
Iconic Deep 2 classic. I don't know if I should have said iconic and classic at the same time.
Nah,
but,
well, I mean, usually they're found in the same territory. Things that are iconic are usually classics, and vice versa.
You know, my old Facebook name used to be Sean Catches.
Why?
Because whenever I pulled a zinger, everyone's like, classic catches.
Did they actually say that, or
no.
yeah?
No,
you're just trying to make it happen.
Just a joke between two people.
Yeah.
You change your name on Facebook, you can't change again for 6 weeks.
It's 60 days.
60 days.
Yeah.
It's changed since the days of 2016.
Yeah. Well, I changed mine probably like 6 months ago, maybe longer. Contemplating another change.
Yeah.
Just keep it spicy. Keep Zuck off my trail.
Oh, of course, but that means you can't have an Oculus Rift.
What's an Oculus?
The headset, the VR. Because if they find out you got a fake name, because that's connected to your Facebook account, they'll deactivate your Oculus account.
So I can't go into the metaverse.
Yeah, no, literally, that's the end goal. That's the end game. You won't be able to mingle in the IRL Habbo Hotel.
Yeah, genuinely, it's just Club Penguin but for adults.
Yeah, seriously, man.
Yeah,
like. Let's question that.
Trust me, I'm questioning it.
Two people talking about online security on a podcast. This is groundbreaking.
Well, I believe you had a story that you wanted to tell.
Yes,
so why don't I give you the floor and give you the lectern?
Well, Dante, thank you for that natural segue to the intro of the pod after it's been introed for 5 minutes. But I went to the dentist today. 3.5 hours ago. Oh, what are you doing that face for? Not a fan.
That is a weird tasting beer.
Yeah. No, it's not as good as the Heineken.
No, the Heineken is way better. What is going on with this?
Yeah, it was the first one. It was like the first one in Australia.
Yeah.
And then they sponsored Collingwood. Anyway, I went to the dentist. Probably like the most traumatic experiences in my life come from the dentist. And I think I'm saying that as someone who has had no braces. NoBraces.com.
Look at your teeth. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, they're
doesn't
pretty
need
good.
them.
Yeah, no braces or knob braces. I like have no reason to be petrified of the dentist. I've never had a filling. I've never had like anything taken out. I've just had my wisdom teeth, but you're knocked out for that anyway, and then you get to eat custard for the next week, so it's fine.
Wonderful.
So I've never actually had any issues at the dentist, but I'm still like super scared to go there and stuff. And then I walked in and I got the double, right? Because I like to shorten my trips to the dentist to twice a year so I can get the clean and the checkup at the same time. Run into the checkup. Funnily enough, the dude's name's Dave. And I was like, it's 32 on Monday. And then I go in and I'm like, oh, fucking, it's some old bloke. He's got grey hair. And I'm like, geez, this is going to be like, you imagine the scary dentists are the old ones with the grey hair and the unnatural smile. And then so he goes down, he gets his little tool, bang, bang, bang. I reckon it was 40 seconds in my mouth. And he goes, awesome, done. I'll move you into the next room. I'm like, that's it. And he goes, yeah, you got great teeth. And I'm like, I've been stressing about this for about 5 days just for that. And this is a lesson for you kids out there. Just brush your teeth and floss.
But that makes me question though, like how diligent he's being. Like surely that's just someone who's
don't question it.
checked out. And he's like, yeah.
I mean, it was at 5 o'clock. I'm
He's
his
like,
last
yeah,
patient.
like looks good. Well, I've got. Is that the story?
That's not the story.
Okay. Continue.
So I did think that, but I'm like, shut the fuck up, Sean. You're not gonna like, hey, quick, have a big look, like.
Well, I would have been like, are you 100% sure? Okay, so you're in the next room.
So I've gone into the cleaning room, the closet, the toiletries closet, and like there's this lady there I've had before. She's really good at cleaning teeth, and she's like, all right, awesome, how you going, blah blah. It's like, do we need to do the small talk, mate? Let's just get this out of the way. I'm already sweating under the pits because they get the little vzz, and the water squirts out, and you're like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
And so like she's going for it. Fine, I'm just like white knuckling it the whole time. Again, haven't actually had any traumatic experiences doing this, so I've got no prize to go off. Like I'm literally stressing about my first thing that hasn't happened yet, and then I'm going through. She's like, awesome, all done. And then like this happened with the bloke as well. They're both like so they were like, Sean, your lip when you smile. Your bottom lip like sort of covers, like, can you see that? It sort of covers my teeth.
Yeah.
So they go, when you're brushing your teeth, you're not really getting all the way in there.
Yeah.
So both of them like stuck their finger under my lip and were like, yeah, you need to get here, like brushing the bottom of my teeth. And I've got like a bit of a sort of a kink when it comes to that sort of stuff, right? Like I'm sort of big on fingers in the mouth, right?
Okay.
Feel free to fucking hit the red button at any point. And then I'm like, fuck me, I've gone from a traumatic event to these two blokes hitting me right in the spot within a matter of 15 minutes. And I'm like, fuck, man, I don't want to associate this fucking awesome feeling I have with this horrible, heart-beating, white-knuckled experience with just like some young lady and an old man in two separate rooms with horrible roofs and holes in them. And I'm just sitting there like, don't ruin this for me. Don't ruin this if there's a higher power out there.
Well, I mean, it could go the other way, though, where next time you go to the dentist, you start associating the fingers in the mouth with the dentist, and you're like, have to wear like baggy pants or something next time you go to the dentist.
Yeah, it's like I go in the thickest summer and I've just got 3 jumpers on. It's like, oh, I've got some condition. Let's quit the small talk. Because that puts another spin on the small talk with the dentist. They're like, oh,
it does.
What footy team do you go for, son? I'm not 6 anymore.
I'm not here for that.
Yeah, also, your fucking fist in my mouth. I'm not going to tell you that I go for Brisbane. Yeah. Anyway, what was your dentist experience?
Well, I thought you were going to go something like painful when you started telling that
Literally,
story.
still no pain. I've still got no prize.
When I was getting my wisdom teeth out, I got the bottom 2 out, and halfway through the first one, the local anaesthetic wore off, so I could just feel it.
Were you awake during?
Yeah, I was awake. Oh. Yeah, so I could feel them like ripping it out, like cutting it out. I got the little fucking blades in there and shit, and partially because I was being polite, but also partially because I was like, it's got to be almost over at this point. Based on how long the first one took, is it worth it? So yeah, the second half of the second tooth, I just fully felt it. Which was really painful, and my mouth was filling up with blood and shit. And when you're not aware of it, you can't feel it. You whatever, your mouth filling up with blood, no stress, don't fucking worry about it. But when you're aware of it, it becomes a very visceral experience. And the first one they pulled out, they were like, "Oh, here you go, here's your tooth," and I was like, "Oh, that's so crazy! Can't believe you pulled that out of my mouth." But after I felt them pull the second one out, and they were like, "Here you go," and it was bloody and gory. I was like, oh my fucking god, you just ripped that out of my mouth.
All right, man.
And then they were like, how's that? And I was like, yeah, it's fine.
Oh,
it's fine.
Dude, I can't believe. Well, I mean, I can understand not wanting to tell them because, what if you stop halfway and you just shut your mouth to do something? But as if they didn't just knock you out.
Well, I don't know. They didn't need to. It wasn't impacted. I don't think.
I had 3 wisdom teeth, and maybe the cutoff's 2.5.
No, I think it's whether. I think if it's impacted, if it's going sideways, you have to get knocked out for it because they got to get in further, the deeper in and stuff. But because it was just stock standard when they were you'll be fine. Probably it didn't take very long, but it was moderately traumatic. But flip side. In that 3 or 4 days, I was just eating custard and ice cream all the time. I started watching Game of Thrones. This is 4 years ago.
Very
so I watched the whole first season of Game of Thrones in 2 days. And I love Game of Thrones now, so it's that, you know, that's what I've got. That's the genesis of my Game of Thrones relationship.
Oh, see, that's awesome. My trauma is unwarranted because you've had a much more horrible experience, and there's a happy ending anyway.
Well, we don't need to scale our traumas.
Okay,
you know,
okay.
There's room for us to both.
Don't we have a pod to trauma dump?
Yeah.
I know it's for basketball.
Yeah.
Actually, one more thing, because God, we're hanging on to the pre-weeds here.
Yeah, we are.
When I did go under with the anaesthetic, what number are we up to?
10 minutes.
All right, I'll make it quick. But when we I remember watching this episode of The Simpsons where Homer has a triple bypass and like he couldn't afford the surgery, so he has to go on TV and get like a public surgery by Dr. Nick, and they give him the anaesthetic and they're like, all right, Mr. Simpson, we're going to need you to count to 10. So he goes, all right, 1, 2, 3, and he goes, oh, you got me, I'm drunk, right? And it's like, haha, that's funny, Simpsons. So when they gave me the anaesthetic, they're just like, oh, Sean, can you count the alphabet backwards? And then I'm like, I said to him, I've got like 2 dentists there and the dude who gives you the anaesthetic. And I'm just like, oh, this reminds me of that Simpsons joke and I just explained what I just explained. And then I said the punchline, and just like you, none of them laughed. And then one of them was just like, oh, that's nice, completely deadpan. And then I just drift off. And then the whole time was like, my joke flop. I need to make up for it. And I couldn't wake up because I was fucking under.
That's a tough crowd.
Yeah, literally tough crowd. Might be the toughest. Had no warm-up before me either.
All right, well, after 11 minutes of dentist chat, should we get into the meat of the pod, as we like to say? So we have 2 big ticket items on our agenda today, and we're going to start with the Indiana Pacers. So a few days ago, there was a report from The Athletic via Shams Charania and Bob Kravitz that the Pacers are ready to begin a substantial rebuild. Now, this is bad news for people like me who made the Indiana Pacers over 42 wins my best bet and said that Karis LeVert was going to be an all-star. So that aside, this is pretty big news for a team that traditionally doesn't ever do this. Like, this has been a team that has, you know, been pretty competitive over the last 10 years, despite a lot of organizational change, going from like the Roy Hibbert, George Hill, Paul George years to, you know, the current iteration of the team through Victor Oladipo, etc. But they've never done this. They've been content to, you know, go for the 4 and the 5 seeds at their peak, knowing that they're probably not going to make it past the second round if they get there. And at their lowest, you know, they've been content to say, yep, with the 8 seed, that's fine. So this is a big kind of about face for the team. And considering that, I don't think it was far-fetched to think that they were going to be good this year. Looking at the pieces and how it was all going to fit together. Obviously, I had rose-coloured glasses on. But to be only 25 games into the season and for this to be already happening, they're saying like, nah, we've seen enough. Yeah. I think it's pretty seismic.
Yeah, definitely. And like, if this was something that was on your radar, right? Like this is a pretty serious decision where you need to either say, all right, we're going to fully commit to rebuilding, or we're fully committing to like being good right now and trying to make the 4 seed. And it looks like it's exactly what they did. They tried to be good. They signed a win now coach in Rick Carlisle. They spent their major asset of the offseason, their draft pick, on a win now rookie in Chris Duarte, right? And they re-signed TJ McConnell. They signed Torrey Craig. Like they did all this stuff. Torrey Craig. Creek, you know, like Creek. Yeah. So like they did all this stuff to win, and then they're just like 25 games in, tiny sample size, with the team not really built for Rick Carlisle. Like Rick Carlisle, if he could do it, would play 4 guards and 1 center. He's been given 2 centers and then a bunch of tall guards. So it's like, yeah, okay, if this was on the cards, that's completely fine, and you decided not to go with that avenue. But give it a year. Like, you know, you're in year 1 of 3 for Rick Carlisle.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully year 1 of 3. You know, hopefully it's much more than 3 because it goes well. But it's again weird because he's come into a situation where you were ostensibly like a win now team, and you know you were definitely going to be in the play-in mix. You know, optimistically you could be in the playoff mix. To then go organizationally and say, nah, we've seen enough 25 games in of this team healthy. Almost healthy because TJ Warren's not there yet. But, you know, LeVert's back, Brogdon's playing, they're kind of together. For them organizationally to say that is weird, but then also for Rick Carlisle to be like on board with it, like,
is he there? Is it? Well, I to be honest, I didn't read the article. Is he like in on that?
Yeah. So there's reports coming out that that he's okay with it. I mean, you know, what else is he going to say?
He's getting paid.
he's getting paid. He also has no leverage, no choice.
Yeah.
But Rick Carlisle is not the coach who you would want to be involved in a rebuild, or you'd think that would be good in a rebuild either, because he's worked with veterans his entire career. The only young player of note, like in the last 10 years, say, because he worked with some young players when he was coaching the Pistons and that sort of thing, but like the only young players he had in his Dallas years that like really thrived, Luka. And Luka came to the league fully formed, ready to go. Like Luka didn't develop into Luka because of Rick Carlisle, who's always going to be Luka.
Yeah.
So he sounds like a perfect fit for this veteran team. He's not going to be a great fit on whatever comes next. So I think there's potentially some organizational disconnect, which means what do you do with Rick Carlisle? Like if you're bad the rest of the year because you trade away some of your guys, you're bad next year, and then he's like in the last year of his contract and the team's been bad. Like what? I don't know.
Yeah, and we're going to on the court now. Obviously, the names there that could get moved, and it was interesting. Now you've got the two bigs, you've got Sabonis and Turner, but it was interesting that the article, we should mention that it came from Shams Charania and Bob Kravitz of The Athletic. It said that the deal would be one of the bigs and Levert. It wouldn't be okay. Let's try and find a move for one of these, for all three of these dudes, separate homes, and it's also. It's extremely hard to rebuild a team that isn't like if you're Houston, you want to rebuild, you've got James Harden, and you say, all right, let's move James Harden, we'll get a bunch of picks, we're going to get whatever they got for him, and then you can start rebuilding because you're bad. If you move Sabonis, you might actually end up being a better team because you're just getting rid of one of those centers and you've got a little bit less of a logjam, right? So it's like to do this quote substantial rebuild, you need to move multiple pieces in multiple deals. In a very, 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 very perfect world, they're probably not going to be all on the exact same day. Like you could see a Rudy Gay Toronto situation where you just like addition by subtraction, get rid of a dude, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this sort of like works a little bit more because maybe you've actually just got, you know, Davis Bertans right next to Myles Turner, and you're like, oh, hang on, 5 out, this is kind of sexy, right? And also because Malcolm Brogdon signed an extension before the season started, I believe he can't be traded for the whole entire season.
Yeah, that's right.
So no matter what you do, you're going to have a very sturdy point guard there. And like, God, wouldn't it be nice if Brogdon was still on the Bucks? You're going to have
contractually obliged to tick that off.
You're going to have very sturdy point guard play with whatever team you have. So they're going to look pretty good because you've got a good point guard. So it's like a rebuild might not actually work. So what do they mean by substantially rebuild? And what I'm afraid of is Kevin Pritchard, the GM, has said this, but he said that before when he traded Paul George, and then he prioritized getting back a young prospect, and he got Victor Oladipo, and he actually got Sabonis, and Sabonis turned into an all-star, but at the time he wasn't. It was based around Oladipo. So is Kevin Pritchard saying we need to do a substantial rebuild and saying let's tank and let's go get Victor Wembanyama, whatever his name is, right? What's his name?
Who?
He's like the projected number one pick. Victor Wembanyama.
Not Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah, of course. My rich soccer knowledge brought that one out of the weeds. But so like, is this Kevin Pritchard saying, all right, I've got it wrong, let's rebuild by going into the tank, or is he saying rebuild? Because rebuild could just mean retooling. What do you think? Like, is there a possibility you reckon that he's just like using this as an excuse to sort of use a get out of jail free card?
I mean, maybe, but I didn't get the sense that it's Indiana. Like his job probably wasn't on the line if this team like didn't live up to expectations. Because in all likelihood, I mean, they got off to a really rough start, but Levert playing his way back into form. Warren's missing. Brogdon missed some time early in the season. I think they're 11-16 now, but I'd put pretty good money on them being much closer to like 500 by the end of the season.
Yeah.
So, you know, if they underperform their expectations by 6 or 7 games, like Kevin Pritchard's not going to get fired because he's got cachet there. So I wouldn't necessarily look at it as a get out of jail free card, like he kind of, you know, he's trying to like I guess preserve his job or kind of like increase his longevity. But I guess, like I said at the top, it is a real big organizational shift because they have been so content just to be average, and this would just be like another average season. But one thing that you said before that I think is really interesting is on the potential for addition by subtraction with Sabonis. He's probably the second or third best like facilitating big man in the league.
Yeah, but how long's that list? Like 2 or 3?
Well, I mean, he's still a dude who can genuinely get you 5 assists a game. He's 25 years old. He's a 2-time All-Star. Has there ever been a less valuable 25-year-old 2-time All-Star than Sabonis? Because what's his value? And more to the point, who's trading for him?
Well, do you want to start getting into some Sabonis
trades?
I
I think any discussion of what this rebuild, retool, or whatever is going to look like is going to start with him because he's the most valuable.
I think
of him, Turner and Levert.
I think Sabonis is the most valuable, but I think if they make a trade, they would get more in a Myles Turner return. Because I think people would look at Myles Turner as a player who can be a centre on a championship team. I don't think anyone's going to look at Sabonis as a centre on a championship team because you look at Jokic right now and everything he's doing. He's the absolute top, 1 percentile for a player in that mould, and Jokic hasn't quite done it yet, obviously, and there's been some injury questions and so on, but Jokic hasn't done it. So how far can you go with Sabonis as your 1A, 1B, alpha and omega? He's your big white European centre. He's not going to go further than Jokic. So I think there's a lot more question marks over what you can do with a team built around Sabonis. Let's say Boston trades for him, right? Because that's Boston's been trying to trade for a centre forever, or at least their fans have. I wouldn't rate that team as much as that. I would much rather a team in Boston with Time Lord as your centre and everything else as it is than Sabonis as your centre and everything else as it is, just because they don't need scoring from the centre position. They've got scoring elsewhere, and what's much more valuable from the centre spot is just having defence, and obviously Time Lord's got quite a big ceiling as well. I just don't see a real championship caliber team trading for Sabonis. What do you think?
Well, I think that it's difficult to project where he's going to go because the championship caliber teams don't have what
it will take,
what Indiana wants.
Yeah.
The championship caliber teams can. Yeah, well, the championship caliber teams could send out matching salary, like some of them could, and attach a shitty first round pick, but that's probably not going to get. You're trading away a 25-year-old All-Star. You're going to want to get something actually valuable in return.
Yeah.
So I don't know that those teams, even if they did view him as the missing piece, we want to trade for this guy, get him in the building, would have the assets that Indiana would even want to start that conversation, which then pushes you further down, and then you kind of have the conundrum of mid to lower tier teams who want to add a star are not going to give up the farm for Sabonis because he's not.
You're not that guy.
He's not viewed in the same way. Yeah, you're not that guy. He's not viewed in the same way as what you might think for Devin Booker, 25-year-old 2-time All-Star. He's not.
He's not growing.
He's not viewed in the same way. It doesn't help that he's having a pretty down season statistically this year. But I don't know, throwing out a random team
San Antonio,
they're not going to view him as we get this guy and we're kind of relevant again. He's not Bradley Beal. Shit teams aren't going to give up the farm for him, which means the best assets that Indiana's going to want to kickstart this rebuild are probably off the table as well. So you're kind of locked into this middle road, which is weird because
that's where they've been for the past decade as well.
But he's their best player. He's definitely their best player, and you kind of potentially can't get anything good for him.
Yeah,
which is
because he's an awkward fit.
He is an awkward fit. And I get what you're saying about the Turner. About the Turner deal maybe bringing in more because there'd be more teams that say fuck, if we could just get a big defensive 5
to just shoot threes.
Actually, I'm retiring from questioning if people's improved 3-point shooting is for real after the Lonzo experience. I'm literally never prognosticating about threes again. He is an easier fit. His skill translates more easily to something that
lower usage.
Lower usage.
If you're a good team, you don't have much usage to go around.
But Sabonis is better, and Sabonis is really good.
So I said this to my housemate in the past week after this news came out. I can see Turner winning a championship as the 5th or 4th option. I can't see Sabonis winning a championship as the 1st or 2nd option.
Yeah, but you might put him into... Maybe we can throw some names out. So, hypothetically, what about if you put him on Memphis? Sabonis on Memphis. And then you've got him next to Triple J. On offense, it's not a problem because Triple J doesn't fucking go into the paint. So he's just shooting threes. And Sabonis can be your elbow facilitator. He can beat people up on the post. He can offensive rebound. They're not getting in each other's way. Defensively, Triple J is more spry to get out and kind of cover space. You don't want him defending on the perimeter because he's a great shot blocker. Sabonis is not like the most nimble defender, but there'd be a way to finagle it.
It's similar issues with Myles Turner.
It is, but like Myles Turner also, you know, one of his best offensive skills is being in and around the basket and offensive rebounding and kind of just like impacting in there. That's not Jaren Jackson's skill whatsoever. So I feel like there's less to untangle there.
Yeah.
Defensively, you still would have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And you would kind of be marginalising Triple J a little bit by asking him to defend more in space.
Yeah.
But that's potentially something that's in his wheelhouse. And then you're in a situation where he's the 2A or the 2B to Ja Morant, you know. It doesn't have to be as stratified as like 1, 2, 3, but offensively, that's a pretty like...
But like in a deal, like I completely understand your reasoning, but a deal for that would have to be like Steven Adams, Zion Williams, and like
Dylan Brooks and assets because Sabonis' contract is 18.
So then Steven Adams coming off the bench and you're just paying him like 17 mil for the next 2 years coming off the bench.
Well, you know,
that's the cost of doing business, buddy.
Opportunity cost. You could, you know, like after this season, you could dump him because he's an expiring. Someone would take him, attach a second round pick, you know, send him off somewhere. His presence does complicate it. It's not as like clean, but don't worry. You can't be thinking about Steven Adams if you think that you've got the chance to get an all-star level player.
Yeah, okay.
Sabonis is definitely an East all-star, but he's still obviously really good.
Yeah, yeah.
If Sabonis turned in a 25-13 season in 2 years, no one would be surprised.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, he's that good.
Yeah, I just worry that it's hollow because he's done this and he hasn't come out of the first round.
Yeah, but maybe he's miscast as the best player on the best team. Maybe Brogdon isn't as good. Maybe, you know, the supporting cast hasn't been...
Yeah, it's been pretty good.
But has it though?
Has
it though? Because there are worse teams. Like there are teams where where their best player is worse than Sabonis sort of like made the playoffs. Is that like more of a comment on Sabonis not being able to like lead a team to the playoffs, or is it like maybe the sum of the whole team is like less than the total of its parts?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So just talking about this, I didn't actually prepare this, but I remember I wrote this article for the Knicks Wall on the 23rd of March this year, right? And it came after some rumours coming from J. Michael of the Indianapolis Star that said that the Knicks are interested in trading for Myles Turner should he become available. So this was 9 months ago.
The last thing that the Knicks need is another defensive center.
It would be moving on from one of their centers. I don't know how Tibbs I don't know if Tibbs knows that centers can shoot threes, but it would actually go a long way in helping.
He might burst an artery the first time Myles Turner misses a three. He'll be like, "Myles, no more."
I was watching them play the other day. And the camera went onto Tibbs, and then the commentators are like, "Well, there's Tibbs dishing in vision." Just rhyming some irrelevant thing. Clyde.
Clyde literally lives in another world.
I really like him.
He's like good, but he exists in a different realm to us. Like, fucking hell.
It's different planes, bro.
Yeah, genuinely different planes.
But anyway, so the camera was on Tibbs. They're like, "Oh, this is New York Knicks head coach Tibbs." You know, they just fill fucking time. And then they stopped talking for a second. And then Tibbs is like, "You're going to call a fucking foul?" And then they quickly turned off. And Clyde was like, "Well, fruity language." To be fair, there was a couple of fucking hacks that didn't get called.
Egregious.
So, like, Myles Turner would be... I would like him on almost every single team in the NBA, except for the Pacers. But would you like him, just as you're talking about Sabonis, we've got this mid-level team that wants to take that leap, and maybe the Knicks should be interested in both Sabonis and Turner. But what do you think about someone like a team like the Knicks or the Pelicans, which I've been banging that drum for a long time? For Turner.
Yeah.
Instead of Sabonis, for all the same reasons. But just a lower usage guy, because if you are a mid-tier team, you're either rising or you're sort of set where you are, like the Pacers have been for the past decade, and just bring in a low usage, good defensive kind of stretchy shooter in Myles Turner.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely more skeptical on his offensive game than you. It sounds like.
Well, we've been like this for like 3 years now. I can't believe it. I thought you would really like him.
No, because I just like he doesn't really have much. Like when he's on shooting the ball, like he's 7 foot tall and he's shooting threes. Like it's an amazing skill to have. But in terms of being a well-rounded offensive player, that he is not.
No, but you don't need him to be.
No, I get that fully.
But let's say you've got Rudy Gobert and how great an offensive player he is, but there's obviously some warts in the playoffs. You've got Myles Turner, who isn't as good as Rudy Gobert at defending the rim and probably almost definitely never will be, but on offense he gives a little bit more than what Rudy Gobert does. Do you like that?
Well, I would contest that point because the gravity of a Rudy Gobert rolling to the rim is what makes everything possible for Utah's drive and kick game. That's the starting point for all that. And Myles Turner doesn't have that as a role. Like he's never been like a super effective role man. He's not posting up.
You seen this?
What he's what
40% from three?
Yeah, no,
on 5 a game.
Yeah, he's stroking it. He has been inconsistent, shall we say? But he definitely can shoot. I just don't see the value there on offense as much as you do, I guess. Defensively, like you say, he's not as good as Rudy Gobert defending the rim, but he's pretty fucking good. Like he's genuinely, last season, this season, playing at a level where you'd be in the conversation for, defensive player.
Yeah.
Certainly last season. Certainly in the all defensive conversation as well, which is a huge valuable skill that lots of teams will be interested in bringing in. But there's something for me about Sabonis where it's like there's untapped potential. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he turns into 25 and 13 with 5 assists. Like he's got that kind of skill set that is super modern, super versatile. He can score in a whole bunch of different ways. I think there's a type of team that would be more interested in bringing him in, and a type of team that would be more interested in bringing Turner in, and maybe the better teams would be interested in bringing Turner in.
Yeah.
Why doesn't someone like Sacramento just trade for Sabonis? You trade Bagley and
how are they going to pay for giving up Bagley?
Well, just salary. You trade Bagley and Davion Mitchell and a first round pick or something, and then everyone wins because Bagley's in there, and then they can decline his option and they can just free cut space. They get 2 first round picks, and then Sacramento gets rid of Bagley. They get Sabonis in there, and it's like, look, we've got Fox and Sabonis.
I don't know, man.
It'd be very Kingsy.
Yeah, I just don't know. And something that gets brought up every single time, because obviously the Golden State Warriors have Andrew Wiggins, who is getting paid way more than he's worth. Not that he's been a bad player, he's just not worth the maximum contract. And they obviously have young players to throw in there.
Don't tell the Timberwolves that.
Do you like the Golden State Warriors trading for either of these two guys?
Nah.
Yeah, neither. All right, let's move on.
Yeah.
One final piece of news that I wanted to put in here for comedic purposes, but this was in the article from Shams and Kravitz, not Lenny. It was that TJ Warren would like to re-sign with the Pacers. I got to feel bad for TJ Warren after the bubble. He was in line for a big payday. Obviously got injured.
20 mil.
Couldn't play the following season, and now he still hasn't checked in. And I think there was a report that his injury got re-aggravated. He's not going to be back till 2022. Sucks, man. And now his market's drying up, because if his team does go into a full rebuild, he's going to be the only good player on this really young team. And why would they pay TJ Warren heaps of money when they're not trying to compete? And it's a bit fuck, poor dude, because now every other team is going to be well, you're an injury risk. We've got no personal connection to you. Yeah,
but the flip side of it is Indy just pays him on a short-term deal, and then if he plays well next season, then someone will trade for him.
Yeah, trade cash or something.
Trade cash. No, if they sign him to a 2-year, $30 million deal, at the end of the season.
You know what I mean.
No, I know what you mean, but
go on, say it for people. The Phoenix Suns traded him for cash.
Yeah.
Not even a top 55 protected second.
Literally just fucking cash. Fleece. It's the all time biggest wool factory moment of the last few years. But you sign him 2 years,
There's a
30.
value deal, yeah.
Next season, he comes in, he plays shit. Sorry, he plays well on a shit team. He averages 20 points. Bam.
Yeah,
Marcus
yeah.
Morris Senior. Someone trades for him.
Yeah,
You get a
yeah,
first round pick. The whatever wing needy team halfway through the season is like, if only we had a wing squad. There you go. First round pick done. All for the price of, giving him a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, then you just
Keep him
it's
and
two,
he stretches
it's
the
2
floor
years
for
and
young people.
you wash your hands of it and whatever.
Yep.
Someone has to take the shots and may as well be him.
May as well be Kyrie as well.
The depth, the deep two. God, that's a mouthful. Anyways, I'm Marco, co-host of the Hey, Daniel Gafford, what's the name of our podcast?
The JVG NBA Tribute Show.
Wow, I can't believe it's that easy. Thanks, Gaff. You probably know us as two members of the Four Man Weave plus Marco, but we know you as our next listener.
Well said, Lucas. I gotta ask, how do we differ from the Pack of Basketball podcasts?
It's a great question, Marco. You see, on our basketball podcast, we have two male co-hosts.
Wow, truly groundbreaking. After this episode, stay on your favourite podcasting app and give us a spin.
Let's move on to the other big topic is that the messy Portland Trailblazers, like this
Messy.
the overnight
Handle
this,
your business, Portland.
over the night overnight
Over the night.
Portland shat the bed. Like,
Yeah.
I went to bed being like, ooh, this is a little bit interesting. And then I woke
Did
up.
you?
Yeah.
Not before you went to sleep last night? You were like,
Yeah. Did a little bit of light reading. And I woke up and I'm like, holy shit, there are 3 different talking points here that are fucking incredible. So I'll run through all the news at the start and then we can talk about what we want to there. So first of all, was it a week ago now that Neil Olshey was fired?
Yeah, I think did we talk about it last week? We did.
So, actually, the week before, because it was Four-Man Weave plus Marco last time.
Yeah.
Check that out if you haven't, and thank you to everyone for listening to it. It's been one of our most listened to episodes. Neil Olshey was fired. Joe Cronin came in as the interim GM, but Joe Cronin has the opportunity to win the position, and it's very awkward that they fired him and not replace him immediately because there are some serious big decisions to make here that could either be blowing up the team or trying to make the team better. So obviously Joe Cronin has the power now to just chuck in like a 2025 unprotected first round pick to trade for TJ Warren or something if they need wing help, right? And then Dame, who has said in person at today's game that stop believing what you're hearing. I've never requested a trade. I've never said anything. He obviously says
Who's that bloke that begs to differ? Henry Abbott?
Oh yeah,
Who reported that he actually did request a trade and then Dame blew up at him. Anyway, Henry Abbott begs to differ.
Well, Henry Abbott found out that he actually was considering a trade and had, what was it? There was like a formal meeting between professionals with LeBron and AD.
Yeah. Boat buddy.
So then Damian Lillard denies the trades. Obviously, it's just coming from his PR people. It's not directly coming from him, so he's not lying. But then his people say that he would love an extension because money, and he's eligible for a 2-year, $107 million extension, which is the max he can get, which would pay him through his age 36 season, which is the 26-27 season, coming from Adrian Wojnarowski. And apparently, Neil Olshey didn't want to do this, and Dame's camp was unhappy with that. So that could have also led to him thinking about asking for a trade because he wasn't going to get the money off Neil Olshey, bloody blah. He didn't do it. And then Dame says that he wants the Blazers to move veterans on the team to get better immediately. He actually named one of those veterans. His PR firm, or his PR people, said that they would like to move CJ McCollum and future picks for Ben Simmons. He specifically said that. Then CJ McCollum came out and said, no, if Dame wanted to trade me, he would have said something. I don't know, CJ, hold on. Then CJ gets a collapsed lung and he's out indefinitely. And I don't know anything about collapsed lungs, but they shouldn't be collapsed. So I'm going to guess it's more than a game. He didn't travel with the team to Golden State today before they lost, which was a fucking sad game to be a Blazers fan. You were watching Dennis Smith Jr. and CJ Ellaby. And then Dame was like, no, I didn't ask for the trade, but also I want this max contract, and then maybe we can go from there. Obviously, he's mentioned Ben Simmons. Daryl Morey comes out and says, no, we don't want CJ McCollum. We want we want Damian Lillard, which makes it even more weird. Just please finish up that Ben Simmons situation. And then I think that is everything we have.
Yeah,
What
those are the three.
Oh, and they're 11 and 15.
Yeah, and they suck, and their second best player is like out for
And
months probably.
Larry Nance Jr. was the one walking the ball down the court today, and their coach isn't good.
Yeah,
Their new coach hasn't been good, and then
they're 30th in defense through the first quarter of the season,
and all their role players that haven't been making any shots whatsoever. Ben McLemore hasn't been the secret sauce to fucking fix everything.
Don't tell the 2011 Kansas Jayhawks that. Don't tell them.
Yeah, yikes.
I've got like burned into my brain the memory of watching his last game at Kansas in the Kansas arena.
Was that with Wiggins and
No,
Wiggins and
I
Embiid?
don't think it was. I think he was his own. He was his own man, shall we say? No, and they serenaded him with one more year after, and I was like, hectic. This guy's going to be so good. And now that seems like a very abstract memory.
Well, it turned out he couldn't dribble.
Well,
And you need that.
or really shoot, or rebound or defend.
He's learned how to shoot now.
Yeah, well now he has, but the 6th overall pick. Yeah, so let's bring it back to the Blazers. Let's start with the first bit of news, which is the idea that Damian Lillard wants a $107 million over 2 years extension on his current deal, which has already got 2 more years after this one.
Yeah.
That would make him the highest paid player in NBA history when he's 37 years old.
To be fair, we're breaking that record every season.
No, I know, but it's
Fuck ton of
top
money.
of the market, top 10
More than
kind of
Steph Curry.
Yeah, it'll be even in 2027 to be top 10 money for a 37-year-old player. No one's given Dame that money.
Is he vegan yet?
Yeah, well,
Has he started yoga?
Don't get him in a room with Chris Paul. That's insane. No one's giving him that money.
No.
So I guess the calculus in his brain becomes, well, I'd rather be somewhere else, but if I'm going to stay in Portland and they gave me an extra 110 mil, well, that would swing it, and I'd be happy to stay in Portland.
Yeah.
So if that is the kind of calculus, is that, well, if you don't give me the money, then I would rather play somewhere else. So I might actually ask for a trade. Because he's got to see that the writing's on the wall here.
The team's going nowhere.
The team's going nowhere. CJ, now, his trade value is completely tanked because CJ's having a down year as well on a bad Blazers team. That is, collapsed lung. I also know nothing about collapsed lungs. But surely that's a couple of months.
Yeah.
So he then becomes a bit more of an unstable asset when previously you were kind of like looking at him as like, I know exactly what I'm getting. I'm getting 22 and 5 from this dude. Now you're like, oh, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
The team's going nowhere. The coach is not very good. The role players are not very good. The organization is in flux. He's got to surely be a rat fleeing a ship at this point.
Yeah. And it's like, I guess this is the end goal for Dame, because Dame, his whole career, said, I want to be the guy that's on the one team the whole time. I want to stick with it, and I want to win a championship with that team.
Yeah.
And by him saying that, fans like us and fans of Portland are like, oh, good on him. Like, he's doing it. You don't see it very often. It's obviously a bit different when you don't win stuff like Steph Curry doing it, but, at least he's doing it, bloody blah. Noble. But there becomes a point where, the nobility goes from just, sort of an irrelevant factor to, if he goes to Portland and says, I want this extension, I've been here my whole career, I just want to make this money now, because maybe he does see the writing on the wall and goes, well, I also like money on the wall. So then he gets to play the career Portland Trailblazer effect there. And if you're Joe Cronin, you've got pressure to be good at your job, to get rehired by management. You might be getting this pressure from Damian Lillard, who says, well, I'm just going to lay an egg if you don't pay me this money. And in Joe Cronin's got this half a year window to keep his job if he wants to do that, or if he wants to rebuild, he's got to do that. But if he trades Dame, he's the evil guy who stopped this guy from being that one team guy for his whole entire career. But if he gives him the extension, then he's that guy who's just paid a 37-year-old $50 million. It's a fucking rock and 3 hard places.
Yeah.
If I were him and I wanted to keep my job, I would not pay an extension and just trade him.
Yeah, if you want to keep the job, you trade him, because then you get to say well, no results are expected, we're rebuilding, so
yeah,
and
clean slate and stuff.
Politically, I don't think you can trade Dame until he requests a trade.
Yeah.
but his trade value will never be higher. So if he requests a trade, you just fucking send him. You send him wherever you can and get whatever you can back. Because like as soon as you do that, someone will trade for CJ. You'll get something back for CJ.
Sabonis and Turner.
Yeah, there you fucking go. Throw Levert in there and let's fucking run it back this year's Pacers. You will get something back for CJ, and then like you just wind down the contract with the rest of the other average role players. It'll be sad for a few years, but I don't think politically you could trade Dame before he had requested a trade.
And it looks like we're heading that way.
Looks like we're heading that way, but he does, you're right in identifying this almost like this savior complex, though, that he always has wanted to just be Steph Curry. But it's like, you're not Steph Curry, you're not Kobe, you're not Dirk. You're great. You're truly great, but you're not all time. You're not like on the level of a player who can, just by being there, win a championship.
Yeah.
We're seeing what is happening when the team around him is pretty average, and those players were all in situations in their career where they were playing with a pretty average team, the franchise going through transition or a down year or whatever, and you're not 11 and 16, you're the 6th seed.
Yeah.
So I'm obviously not breaking news in saying that he's not on that level, but like, does he know that? And is the scenario where he doesn't actually see that the writing's on the wall, and until like 2 years from now, when he's missed a bit of time, he's not playing as well, he's a bit older, that contract is not 3 years away, it's 1 year away. Like, if neither side does something now, he could just get there in 2 years and be like, I want out really bad. I feel like I've wasted my prime here. Like, you need to trade me now. And they'll be like, well, we're actually not going to trade you because we're not going to get anything of value back for you. We're just going to keep you. And
you get John Wall.
And you get John Wall, exactly. And then you can pay him to not play for you.
Yeah.
And then you just sit, like.
But Dame, Dame's got serve here. Like, Dame has all the power in this position because, as I said, everything with Joe Cronin and all the pressures on him, I'm just going to take a stab in the dark and say that he doesn't want to be the bad guy that drove Dame out of town. Like, if Dame signs his contract, he's won. But if he gets traded before requesting a trade, he's also won. There is a tiny, tiny little scenario where Joe wins here.
Well, he's won in the...
Joe who?
I'm not saying anything. There's a tiny scenario... Oh, sorry, not tiny scenario. There's a scenario here where he wins and he gets $107 million. Congratulations. And then you lock yourself in Portland forever because trading for Dame when he's contracted in the high 30s through the end of the 2025 season, when he's going to be 35, is a lot different to when he's contracted through the end of the 2027 season at 50 plus those last 2 years. Like, every team in the league who's good would say, are we a Dame away from winning a championship? And some of those teams are going to take themselves out of that race because they're going to say, maybe I could get Brad Beal, or maybe I could get star X who's 4 or 5 years younger and not contracted through that whole way, because that contract is it's guaranteed to be the worst contract in the league. It's like a Westbrookian foresight where as soon as he signs it, everyone's like, yeah, that's going to suck. And the thing that happens with these contracts all the time is that they suck sooner rather than later. We're looking at this and we're saying 2027, man, that's going to be a bad contract. It might be a bad contract in 2024, and then you're locked in on 3 more years of an immovable contract. Like, that's going to take some teams who might think about adding Dame now, if the opportunity became available, out of the running, which then means in this roundabout abstract way, he's actually hamstringing himself by hamstringing himself in terms of basketball by locking in the bag. Yeah. The flip side is that, I'd take $107 million over 2 years. So
all right, so let's change it up a little bit. And from Dame's point of view, trading guys on the team to get better now, do you see like an avenue where there's some miracle trade where, let's say you turn Nurkic, who is looking completely different to what he did 4 years ago. Let's say you turn Nurkic into a Myles Turner or something. Like, is there something out there that saves the Portland Trail Blazers? Like, do you think, without naming any names, does that exist?
No, it doesn't, because like we talked about CJ's value before, and we've talked about Nurk's value, many times on the pod. And he's just a completely different player. No team would trade for him.
They've sort of already they've tried to fix the team 3 times now. Derek Jones Jr., Robert Covington, Larry Nance Jr.
Yeah, but those are just like tinkering around the edges. Like Larry Nance Jr. was going to play 24 minutes a game. That's not going to fix the team. The issue with Portland is not only that it's been the wing graveyard, but they haven't developed any players. The best players that they've drafted since CJ that have been with the team for a few seasons, it's like Anthony Simons, Zach Collins, who's on the Spurs now and didn't play for half of the time in Portland because he was injured, and Nasir Little. Nasir Little looks good, but Nasir Little's not someone who's gonna, Nasir Little.
He might be Larry Nance Jr.
Yeah, exactly. Nasir Little is probably prime Mo Harkless, and it's well, there you go. You have the exact same problem again. These teams that don't hit on someone good, you got to hit on another CJ kind of level player, someone who you turn a mid first round pick into a really, really good starter, and there you go. Now you're kind of bringing it together. They haven't done that. Their role players, 2 years ago, calling Nurk a role player was was literally blasphemous because he was actually that good. He was one of the best centers in the league a couple of years ago, pre-injury. But their role players, their value is also at an all-time low. Covington, who they traded 2 first-round picks for, what would you get for him in a trade? Would you get a second? Someone would just say, a playoff team would say, take 2 seconds, and we'll take the money off you.
Yeah.
The asset management has been poor because all of their assets are depreciating, except Dame right now. He's steady right now, but you just know
he's at the edge of the cliff.
Yeah, he's at the edge of the cliff. As time goes on, he's just going to depreciate. He's never going to be more valuable than he is right now.
Someone, to make a shorter story along, someone tweeted this. It was a picture of Terry Stotts drinking a beer, just watching it eagerly. I won't tell you
was
about.
Was that at a Blazers game?
That was at a Timbers game, Portland Timbers, whatever.
So he still lives in the area?
No, I think this is an old photo, but the person who tweeted it had a vested interest in seeing Neil O'Shea lose for personal sexist problems. So they were very happy to see this whole thing just crumbling around them for something that Neil O'Shea did to himself and did to this team. Despite, making a conference finals and without having to face the Warriors or the Houston Rockets at any point before, or the Utah Jazz before getting to those conference finals. Bit of a disappointing end to Dame's career. Can we say that now?
No, because what if he gets traded to what if he gets traded? What if he's the point guard that the Clippers are looking for and he gets traded to the Clippers? Or I know that that's never going to happen. But he gets traded to a really good team and he wins 2 chips in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Or he does what Kyle Lowry does and he's old point guard, but he goes to the Heat and it's he's the steady hand that they need. Too early to say disappointing end to Dame's career, but as we get further and further away from the 2019 conference finals appearance, it starts to look worse and worse. And I have, the entirety that we've been doing this podcast basically been saying, put some respect on that achievement. Only 4 teams every season get to do it. Even if it's...
Yeah, you actually have been doing that.
Even if it was, circumstantial, they're still a really good team and they, deserve a bit of respect for that. But as we get further away from that, it does look less and less impressive because everything that... I think I was doing a little bit of light reading myself. Since that conference finals appearance, they're 88 and 89.
Oh, nice.
In terms of record.
Yeah,
so,
but no, you're right. Don't discount conference finals appearances or even finals appearances, even if you don't have to face LeBron, Jokic, or Kawhi on that run. It really doesn't matter because at the end of the day, you're in the history books. I know.
Trust me, I know.
I just... We're getting into the weeds and we'll have to wrap this up soon, but I just think back to LaMarcus signed with the Spurs in 2015? I think back to when LaMarcus signed with the Spurs and Nikola Batum signed with the Charlotte Hornets. May you rest in peace. Charlotte Batum. And Neil Auchley said, all right, this is my time to shape the team. And he sort of came in, he had that sort of 2 windows thing, but he goes, all right, CJ, the guy who I drafted a year ago, you're starting. We're going to grow you into a player that you are. Damian Lillard, you're still like 22 years old. You've just won Rookie of the Year. You've hit all these game winners on these really big playoff teams, and now you're just this veteran for this young team. And I remember reading an article, and I've remembered this forever, and it's finally come in handy. And it was that Dame was just taking on that leadership mantra, and this is when all of a sudden a big buzz for Dame's like a cool dude started buzzing. And he went shopping. He went to a shopping centre with Mason Plumlee, Mo Harkless, El Farouk Aminu, and someone else who I can't remember. And all these dudes at the time were like in their very young 20s. And he's like, he had some quotes where he's just like, look, I want to get to know these guys because we're starting a rebuild. We're going to be here for a long time. And I just want to like say, hey, I'm here for you. We're together. Let's move forward together. Let's start to get to know each other off the court. He's just becoming the leader that he became, that he is now. And that team overperformed everything, right? And I think they made a top 4 seed because that's when you had the division rules where if you won your division, you'd go in. They're in a super weak division. And like that was their chance, developing CJ, playing all these young, unproven dudes. They just happened to, like, Mason Plumlee turned out to be league average. Mo Harkless turned out to be a good defender. El Farouk Aminu turned out to be good. CJ grew into, much faster than what he was supposed to be. Because of that, they missed out on getting that third star. And you talked about how Dame and CJ, you just can't do it. You're just banging your head against the wall without that third piece. And, like, you're right, but they tried to get that third piece, and Dame was just too good in that first season. Dame became an all-star. Dame kept growing into an all-NBA player, and they couldn't get that draft pick to look. Maybe the draft pick would have been Zion Williamson or Ben McLemore, but
I think that
they missed their opportunity.
They did miss their opportunity, and
but
it is partly through luck. But I think it's also partly through just bad decisions because every wing. How many wings have they cycled through in the post?
I know.
But they lost every trade.
But I'm saying
they brought in a bunch of bad wings, identified a bunch of players who were not actually what they needed, and then like every year since CJ, we're talking 7 years, I haven't had one.
But they've been like behind the 8 ball this whole time because like Dame, they had Dame on board, and in that discussion in the shopping centre, Dame, in his head, must have been thinking, fuck, we're winning 20 games for the next 2 years, right? Dame was ready to lose, to start again, to be the guy. And because they were good, they're like, shit, we're good now. Let's quickly make a move. And they made the Nurkic trade. Like, that's a good trade. And they did all this stuff to make the team better now. And by doing that, they never really got that third star. They never had another swing. But
good teams do that all the time.
But don't you feel like Portland's always been playing from behind?
No, I feel like that's giving them too much leeway because good teams that have a good young player like do that all the time where they'll make the really good ones will make a move that brings in someone who is the third star or the second star or whatever they needed. To some extent, the Nurk trade was exactly that because you took a somewhat distressed asset or an undervalued asset and you turn him into like for 2 years there, he was probably in the conversation for their second best player. Probably better than CJ in at least one of those years and definitely in conversation for 2 of those years. So that's the sort of move that you have to do where you just turn Mason Plumlee into, oh my God, Nurkic is the 3rd best center in the league this year. It sucks that didn't sustain, but every other move that they've done, they haven't had any of that. And those are the sorts of moves that you have to make when you've got the player. Like they're behind the 8 ball in the sense of like, they were just too good to get the 6th pick, which turned into some superstar. They had fucking Dame, so they're ahead of the 8 ball. You've got the opportunity now to build and to make those moves around the edges, and all you need to do is kind of like hit on 1 or 2 of them and like, bam. They did that with CJ. Did it with Nurk, didn't sustain in any meaningful way, and now we are where we are, and Nurk is, a worse than league average center. Probably. Like,
I just think they didn't get to like refill the coffers because you had Dame and you brought in all these dudes like what turned out to be their young replenishment was El Farouk Aminu and Mo Harkless, right? That was their restocking.
But they've emptied the coffers on anyone, any wing ever since then.
But what if they had more heading into it? So they keep emptying the coffers. Rocco, whoever they had before that, like Trevor Ariza and stuff, they kept emptying those coffers and kept bringing dudes in. But they started from, let's say, like here. This is great for a podcast here with my fans.
Yeah.
But they could have started here. like, and then slowly emptied the coffers. They could have had more.
I guess I would say they did start higher because they had Dame.
But I guess they got nothing for LaMarcus Aldridge.
The first thing, well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's exactly how that played out.
If you had got a Anthony, like look at the Pelicans, they're starting from up here with all those coffers, and they can drain it as much as they want. Portland didn't start at that level. They started halfway, and they just went down, and now they've got nothing.
Yeah, and that is a big inflection point that I guess we haven't really talked about, like in terms of the asset of LaMarcus leaving. The asset, the second best player on your team, because by that point Dame was better than him. Leaving, that's a huge blow. But again, to some extent, that's asset mismanagement, because it's not like there weren't conversations being had in LaMarcus's unrestricted free agency year. Yes, Portland was good, so it would have been pretty rogue to like trade him in the middle of a good season. Yes, like. He took a meeting with them. They tried to like get him to re-sign. They must have been reasonably confident, but in the end, he took meetings with fucking everyone. He took a meeting with fucking Phoenix.
He signed Tyson Chandler for it.
Yeah, he signed Tyson Chandler for him anyway.
Well, as Rob Sava we now tried to do to get LaMarcus Aldridge to stay. Well, I was going to say to come, and that would have been completely correct because he wanted to bring in local.
Yes, let's not rehash.
Yeah,
let's not rehash. We'll save that for the Sava pod when we actually do like a full one when he inevitably, hopefully, gets fired. But
hopefully. Can I just say everything else about your organisation has been fine apart from the owner,
except for the aforementioned cash for TJ Warren. He had a meeting with the Spurs, the Lakers, the Suns. Maybe I'm forgetting someone. So that is
Spurs.
That is. I did say Spurs. I said Spurs, Lakers, Suns. Check yourself. That is an indication that he really wanted to see what else was out there, which Portland would have had to have been, attuned to the possibility that he was going to leave and not doing anything. I just don't really look on them with sympathy, like saying like, oh, you started out with like league average wings in Aminu and Harkless. If only you had like good wings. Well, you hit in so many other ways. You had the young star that like every team dreams of getting. The first thing that any team who's rebuilding wants is a player exactly like Dame. You started from scratch. You did it with CJ, where you had the draft pick that kind of like outperformed expectations and became like a really good player. Although, it is a question of like how good has CJ ever actually been, like, in his own right, assessing him as like a player with impact. That's a conversation to be had, but certainly he's a very good player. Every other move, with the exception of the Nurk trade, which, third time that I've said it is a good trade, but now, you're not reaping the rewards anymore. You had it for a very short period of time. Every other move's been bad. Drafting's been bad. Trades have been bad. Like, yeah, you started with Harkless and Aminu. It would have been great if you started with better players. But like, how about you just don't trade 2 first-round picks for a 30-year-old Robert Covington who falls off a cliff? How about you don't like say last season, Derek Jones Jr. is the guy who we're going to shore up our wing rotation with. Like, Mans was averaging 6 points a game. Like, what are we really doing here? You can't really roll into a season and say wings being a real problem for us, but we're rolling in with Derek Jones Jr. to play at the 3. Like, that's just bad management. Like bad, as we say in the footy world, that's just bad list management.
All right, well, that's the weeds. This Portland situation is messy and is not going to clear up anytime soon. And I'm sure we could wake up tomorrow and everything's just gone to a mess. But we'll wrap it up. How long we go on the pod? An hour and a half?
No, we've been an hour.
We've been an hour. It seems longer than that.
Yeah, tight hour. Something about the Trailblazers will age you, make it seem like it's longer than it actually was.
I'll just end by saying that by the time you're listening to this, go on thedeep2.com. It's that simple. There'll be an article up by yours truly on Gary Payton II. The mitten, if you will, or the young glove.
Everyone's favourite Payton.
And I'm just talking about how effective he has been this young season, and whether it's just a regular season phenomenon or if it's something that can help us in the playoffs. No spoilers. Give it a read. I really enjoyed writing it, and I like the Golden State Warriors.
Do you? Your second favourite team?
Oh, shut up, mate. You sound like Lucas. And yeah, while you're here, if you listen to it and you haven't already, follow us on all our socials.
Follow us on our socials, you dog.
We make some beautiful things on the Instagram. We make some less beautiful things on Twitter, but it's nice to get the cloud up there. And Facebook, if your name is as it is and you haven't been banned by the Oculus Rift. And yeah, if you're enjoying the pod and you know anyone else that's NBA inclined, or if you know any dentists for this episode, send them the link to this episode and get them to listen to it for at least 31 seconds. Totally not saying that because that counts as a play. Give them a listen. Tell them to listen to us.
9 out of 10 dentists recommend the Deep NBA podcast.
Fuck, you were hanging on to that one for a couple of seconds there. That was a good call. Yeah, tell a friend. If you enjoy it, maybe your friend will enjoy it. If they don't, unfriend them.
Unfriend them, but leave us a rating and review.
Dante, I'll speak to you next week.
Hey, at 12 Don Yang. Do you like hearing the down low on all your NBA and basketball content?
Hey, at Will Conkin on Instagram and Twitter. Don't you mean the lowdown on NBA and basketball content?
No, I mean the down low, because that's our show, The Down Low,
where we give you the lowdown on everything NBA.
Check out the Down Low NBA on all your podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple, or even Google Podcasts.
Google has podcasts?
Yeah, I didn't even know that either, but now you know, so go and get it in your ears.